In the vast silence of the African savanna, where the sun scorches the earth and life moves to the rhythm of survival, a single creature stumbled against fate. A cheetah, once the swift ruler of the plains, now dragged himself through the dust, wounded and alone. His leg, grotesquely swollen, pulsed with infection. He was moments away from giving up. But fate is strange. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it comes quietly, in the shape of a gentle hand, a soft blanket, and the watchful eyes of a child too young to understand death, but wise enough to wait for life. What unfolded next would not only test the strength of an animal on the brink, but reveal a bond so pure, so unexpected, that it would move hearts across the world. The sun hung heavy over the savanna, draping the land in gold and silence. Dry grasses whispered with the wind, but otherwise the world seemed to hold its breath. Nothing stirred, except one lone figure in the distance. A cheetah. But not the kind that commands awe. He didn't glide across the earth as a predator should. He staggered, limping through brittle grass, each step slower than the last. The legendary grace of his kind had vanished, replaced by a frail, broken gait. His front leg, once a pillar of speed, was now grotesquely swollen, bearing an abscess so large it looked as though it might burst with every movement. Flies hovered. The skin was dark, stretched to its limit. The pain had become constant, cruelly familiar. Yet he moved forward. There was no roar of defiance. No grand display of strength. Just one trembling creature pressing on, guided not by willpower, but by the bare thread of instinct. The hope that somewhere out there, a hand might reach for him. He tried to lie down. Couldn't. The pain was too much. He stood again, wobbled, paused. His sides heaved with shallow breaths. Around him, the wilderness watched indifferently. Nature does not mourn the weak. It simply forgets them. But someone had seen him. And from that moment, the story of his end began to unravel. Into something else entirely. The cheetah didn't resist. When the rescue team reached him, there was no fight left. Just the quiet surrender of an animal too tired to flee, too hurt to fear. His leg, swollen grotesquely with infection, trembled beneath him. The abscess had begun to weep, a slow leak of something darker than pain, a warning from the body that time was running out. One rescuer knelt beside the animal, gently placing a hand on its bony chest. The other, armed with a sterile scalpel, took position near the leg. Everyone knew, this had to be fast, precise, and above all calm. Then came the incision. And the world held its breath. A thick, yellow stream of pus erupted from the wound, soaking the dry grass beneath them. The stench was unbearable. One of the men turned his head, nearly gagging, but his grip did not loosen. The cheetah's body twitched, but he didn't run. His eyes, clouded just moments ago with torment, now flickered with something faint but unmistakable, relief. From the back of the truck, a boy watched with wide eyes, clutching the blanket he'd brought along, just in case. His father had warned him this might be too much. But the boy hadn't looked away. Not even once. He didn't flinch at the blood. He only whispered, "It's okay now." As if the cheetah could hear him. And maybe he could. They lifted him gently, two rescuers working in perfect, unspoken sync. His body, once built for lightning, now felt like nothing more than skin stretched over bones. His spine curved beneath the touch like an old branch ready to snap. When they laid him onto the stretcher, the silence was deafening. No growl, no cry. Just the low, steady rasp of an animal too tired to resist. In the back of the ambulance, the space was dim and sterile. Monitors hummed softly. And four hung from a metal hook, feeding fluid into the cheetah's fragile veins one drop at a time. Beside him sat a man, silent, focused, and his young son, the boy from the edge of the savanna. The boy didn't speak. He simply placed the blanket he'd brought earlier over the cheetah's hind legs, tucking it carefully as though tending to a sleeping sibling. His small hand lingered on the animal's side, feeling each shallow breath, not quite knowing what to hope for, but knowing that hoping mattered. Time passed slowly. At one point, the cheetah stirred, not in fear but from within, as if somewhere deep inside, his body had recognized something unfamiliar: safety. His breathing slowed. And for the first time in what may have been days, he closed his eyes. Outside, the wheels rolled on, cutting through dust and heat toward a place that didn't promise miracles. Only a chance. And sometimes a chance is all it takes. The clinic wasn't grand. No marble floors. No gleaming lights. Just worn tiles, the faint scent of antiseptic, and hands that had saved more lives than anyone would ever know. They wheeled him into a quiet corner, away from barking dogs and panicked birds. Here the cheetah lay still, barely more than a shadow of what he had been. His temperature was erratic. His heartbeat faint. The wound, even after the draining, remained angry, red, pulsing raw. The lead veterinarian stayed with him through the night. She cleaned the abscess again, inch by painful inch, removing what pus remained, revealing muscle torn and skin eaten away by time and infection. His leg had been shaved clean, but what showed wasn't just damage, it was survival laid bare. Through it all the boy stayed nearby. Sometimes curled in a chair. Sometimes lying on the cold tile floor with a book open, reading aloud even when he thought no one was listening. The cheetah didn't respond. Not yet. They fed him through a tube. His jaw wouldn't move. His eyes, when open, stared blankly into space as if he were drifting somewhere far from this place. Far from the pain, the people, the boy. And yet, one morning as dawn pressed pale gold through the clinic windows, something changed. A sound. A whisper. A page turning. And the cheetah's ear flicked. Just once. But enough to make the boy sit up straight. He smiled, not wide, not loud, but the kind of smile people give when they're too scared to hope, but too stubborn to stop. Outside, the savannah still waited. Inside, a life was beginning to lean just slightly toward the light. The change was subtle. But in a place where every heartbeat mattered, subtle was everything. The cheetah moved his ears again. Then, one afternoon, he lifted his head. It was shaky, uncertain. But it was his own doing. For the first time in days, his body had obeyed him. The boy was there as always, reading. He didn't notice at first, until the silence between sentences felt different. He looked up and gasped softly. The cheetah was watching him. Not with fear. Not even with confusion. But with something far more fragile. Recognition. From that moment, the rhythm of the clinic changed. Twice a day, the veterinarians would come in to change his bandages, now dry, no longer stained with infection. The cheetah's eyes would follow their movements, but they always settled on the boy. When the boy left for a few hours to rest, the cheetah's breathing would grow faster. Restless. But when he returned and sat beside him again, sketching with colored pencils or whispering stories into the air, the predator's chest would rise and fall like waves finding their tide. And then one quiet morning it happened. The cheetah stood. His paws trembled. His back legs were stiff. His body still wore hunger like a second skin. But he stood. The boy froze, too stunned to speak. For a few brief, eternal seconds, the king who had fallen rose. He didn't walk. Not yet. He didn't need to. Because sometimes standing, after the world has tried to break you, is enough to silence time. And in the stillness that followed, the boy whispered just two words. You stayed. And the cheetah blinked as if he understood. The days grew warmer. The wound had closed, not just on the cheetah's leg, but in the quiet places within him where pain had once lived. The bandages were gone. His fur had begun to grow back, though thinly, revealing a faint scar that glinted beneath the sun like a story too deep for words. In the enclosure he now walked freely, each step more certain than the last. His ribs still showed, but his eyes were awake. He no longer watched the boy with quiet pleading. He watched with clarity. There was a morning when the gate was opened, not with ceremony but with quiet purpose. It was time. The boy stood by, holding the same blanket he had once wrapped around the cheetah's frail body. He didn't try to stop him. Didn't even whisper goodbye. Instead, he opened his sketchbook and drew what he saw. Not a patient. Not a shadow. But a silhouette in motion. The cheetah stepped forward, first into the dust, then into the tall grass, and then as the sun flared across the savannah, he ran. And when he ran, he did not run like an animal escaping a cage. He ran like something ancient being restored to the earth. He moved with silence and power, low to the ground, cutting through grass and heat like wind-made flesh. The scar on his leg did not hinder him. It followed, quietly, like a ribbon of memory fluttering behind. He stopped once on a distant hill. Looked back. Not at the people. Not at the fence. But at the place where pain had turned into presence. Where a boy once waited beside him day after day, saying nothing, and changing everything. Then, with a flick of his tail, he vanished into the golden wild. The cheetah was gone. But not absent. Every morning, the boy still woke early, though there were no bandages to change, no meat to grind by hand, no soft breathing beside him. The enclosure was quiet now, yet it didn't feel empty. It felt full of memory and hope. Some nights, when the wind shifted, it carried more than just the rustle of grass. It carried the sound of movement, swift, low, and powerful. The boy would pause, brush his pencil against the paper, and lift his head toward the dark. He never spoke about the cheetah to the others. Not because it hurt but because it felt sacred. Some things lose their magic when said aloud. Their story had been written not in words, but in the silence they had shared. A silence filled with trust. One day months later, a ranger returned from a long patrol with news. Tracks, long, elegant, unmistakable, had been found near a watering hole. Not far from there, a herd had been seen scattered, their patterns broken by a hunter's graceful path. The boy smiled. Not with surprise, but with quiet, unshakable knowing. He opened his sketchbook once more. On the last page he didn't draw the cheetah running nor resting. He drew him standing still, head high, eyes forward, wind in his fur, looking not toward freedom but toward the one who had believed in him when the world had stopped. Because sometimes the wild doesn't take away what you love. Sometimes, it simply gives it back in a different form. In the way grass bends after a body has passed. In the stillness before a storm. In the quiet between a boy and a creature who never needed words to say, "You saved me." Sometimes the wild doesn't just take. Sometimes, it returns what's true. A boy with a broken leg and a cheetah with a shattered soul. Neither could run. But together they learned to heal, to trust, and finally to let go. And perhaps that's the quiet miracle we overlook. Not the strength to hold on, but the courage to set something free. Not knowing if it will ever look back. But when it does, even just once. In the wind, in the shadows. In the memory of a shared silence. You'll know. Some bonds are wild. Some are wordless. But the rarest are unbreakable. Thank you for watching. If this story moved something in you, share it. Not because it's ours, but because somewhere out there, someone may need to be reminded. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it purrs.